India market is one of the most important ones for us. Like there's a few markets around the world, but India is definitely one of the most critical.
In India on-premise,
yes.
So the data remains within the country?
In the country and in the data center of the customer.
Welcome to another episode of Tech Talks, and I'm here today at the Kafka Summit, which is happening for the first time in Bangalore. I'm seated with Waehner, the field CTO of Confluent. Can you tell me who are your major customers in India who will benefit from these features?
Yeah, absolutely. In India, we have a broad spectrum of customers across the industries. On the one side, it's really the more traditional companies like financial services and banks that run on-premise, or also the public sector for government and energy. And on the other side, there's the digital natives. That's companies we call that are born in the cloud. And they in the end started from scratch with innovative digitalization. And two examples we have for that is Meesho and Swiggy. So these are India digital natives that were born in the cloud. They already run at extreme scale with real-time use cases. And they already leverage Kafka as a fully managed service a lot. But now with the availability of Flink GA and now also adding these AI features, they can even do more in one single platform without a lot of custom coding which they need to manage in their own infrastructure to connect that to Confluent Cloud. And therefore, probably the digital natives will leverage this first because they are born in the cloud and these new features come out in the cloud first. And with that, it's super easy for them to connect Confluent also to other AI capabilities and build new use cases with very fast time to market and not worrying about the operations or risk of running that, because the SLAs and the latency, that's what we guarantee as a vendor.
You mentioned Meesho and Swiggy. So what are some of the traditional customers or ones that use maybe older architectures in India? Yeah,
so this is really where right now I have no India customers I can name here, but in general this is really across the different countries, also in Asia. This is many of the traditional banks, this is a lot of the public sector. Like for example in the US we work with all of the major banks, we work with the big banks in the Middle East, in Europe, and also in India, but sometimes for the traditional companies it takes a little bit longer to get more logos, right? We can talk about in the public, and therefore we can just say this in general. For the digital natives, it's a little bit easier to also have the customer speaking with us in the public, and this is why for them we have the more logos we can already talk about.
Can you discuss maybe the specific partnerships that went into setting up the base in India?
Yes, absolutely. So there is several different kinds of partnerships. And so one of them, of course, is with the cloud providers, where we work strategically with to deploy Confluent Cloud also in India, in the regions, on the different cloud providers, so that the customers can run it locally, which is also often important from a compliance and regulation perspective. But besides that, also we partner with all the other software vendors that are available in the regions, like the analytics vendors, the data lakes, and so on. And last but not least, we also work with the local system integrators so that we can roll out solutions together. And this is now actually an example where I can bring a concrete example for one of our customers in the traditional space, which is MindGate. And MindGate is an example. This is a solution provider which built a payment platform that sells this payment platform to Indian banks. And under the hood, it's an OEM of Confluent platform. And with this, the product can in the end do real-time instant payment. And this is a solution they sell to their banks. And the solution for that is MindGate. And this is a great example for the traditional space in the environment of financial services in India on-premise.
In India on-premise,
yes.
So the data remains within the country?
In the country and in the data center of the customer. So this is important, right? Because this is the separation. We are in this case not in the cloud provider where we are running with Confluent Cloud, but instead MindGate as one of our customers uses our on-premise solution Confluent platform as part of OEM of their solution, and they sell their payment real-time solution to the banks, and the banks deploy that in their own data centers on-premise in India.
So can you share maybe successful customer stories apart from Meesho and Swiggy that you already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, around the world, we have really hundreds of public customers across all industries. So the easiest ways, if people are curious, really take a look at our website to learn more. But these customers really range across all industries. Like this is from the manufacturing, wherein customers like BMW in Germany, which connects their smart factories to Confluent Cloud. It's across retailers like AO.com in the UK, where you do context-specific recommendations and discounts per customer, personalized in real time. And this really goes across all the industries and regions. We have Indonesian banks, we have customers in the Middle East about utilities. There's really a broad spectrum. It's always sometimes tricky to have the public logos, right? But this is where on our website you will find a lot of public logos across the different industries you can learn from.
So what is the plan for startups in India? I mean, is there a specific approach you're taking to, get customers who are just beginning, as you said?
Yes, absolutely. So in the end, we have specific initiatives also for startups. So for example, to get specific credits for free so that they can start their business without worrying about the cost of Confluent Cloud. And with this, in the end, they can get started, and only then later they need to pay when they have a bigger revenue, for example. And there are different initiatives where we work with the startups so that they can really kick off the innovation quickly without worrying too much about cost. So this is definitely something happening, and this is where the India market is one of the most important ones for us. Like there's a few markets around the world, but India is definitely one of the most critical. This is, by the way, also what we see in our investment into India from human resources perspective. So in the meantime, in APAC, we have around 20% of our full-time employees, and a lot of these employees are actually based in India.
So when you say India, they're based in Bangalore?
Not all of them, but most of them. So our office is in Bangalore, and several of our colleagues also travel and work sometimes from home. So at Confluent, we are a remote-first company, but for the engineering team, that is mostly based in Bangalore so that they can work together as a team.
You mentioned that India is one of the biggest markets, but is there maybe a program to help people upskill or learn the platform to be able to use it with ease within the, in India?
Yes, I mean, so this is really then dedicated to each region where we have different people and companies supporting that. We also partly work together with partners to enable the Indian engineers, for example. And we have different initiatives here also from a product side regarding the developer experience to make it as easy as possible. And therefore, if you go to our website and want to learn the product, it's so easy to do that because we have the right guidance and free tutorials. But in addition to just learning by yourself, we also have the right events. Like, for example, here at Kafka Summit, we hosted a Flink workshop where interested people could learn from scratch by our experts. And in a similar way, we have many different initiatives alone, but also with partners, how we can either do public events in India or also specifically for customers where we go on site to customers or prospects and do specific workshops to enable them. And this is really critical because one of the biggest concerns or blockers these days is to understand this new paradigm shift of data streaming, because it's so different from APIs and databases, so that we also intentionally heavily invest into enablement of the Indian teams.
Is there plans to maybe expand the team in India in coming years?
Yeah, absolutely in general. So we plan to grow the Indian team by something like 25% over the next year. So this is really significantly growing. And this is in all these areas, not just engineering, but also enablement and also our account teams and consulting. So this is significantly growing over the next year and also behind that.
So what is maybe the technical vision for Confluent in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so this is actually what we also covered in the keynote. And if people are more interested, this is also available on YouTube when you see the recording, very likely already. So one of our key goals from a data streaming perspective is to enable access to data easily. And what we do is we unify operational and analytical estate. This means on the one side, there's transactional workloads, which might still use a mainframe or Oracle database on-premise. And on the other side, there's the analytical estate, which might use cloud-native platforms like Snowflake or Databricks. And what we do with data streaming, at its core, it's real-time, scalable, and reliable. So we, in the end, connect the dots so that you can use all your data, no matter where it's coming from, in both transactional and in analytical behavior. And as part of our vision, we provide these capabilities partly as part of the streaming platform. For example, Apache Flink, as part of the serverless offering, has a unified real-time and batch API. So you can even do batch analytics as part of the streaming platform. Or you can call other models, as we talked about before. But in parallel to that, we did another announcement, which is Tableflow, where we unified integration with other analytics platforms with Apache Iceberg and its table format. So with a button click, you can make sure that a Kafka topic in its schema can be made available via an Iceberg table format to any other analytical platform that supports it. And already today, many major platforms support it. Like we showed a live demo in the keynote from integrating with Amazon Athena and Snowflake, and both of them directly can consume from the same storage. So the main goal is we unify transactional and analytical workloads and making it super easy and cost efficient for the developers. While they still can choose their favorite tool of choice, they consume the data from the same storage to reduce the cost with that.
So what were some of the challenges in building such a platform? I mean, on the technical side?
Yeah, I mean, on the technical side, there's obviously a lot of technical challenges because it's not just about the integration of these systems, but really building them as first-class citizens under the hood in the framework and in the solution. And that's exactly the sweet spot of the cloud, and that's what so many Indian companies leverage, because you don't have to care about these details. We talked about in the keynote, for example, we re-engineered Kafka for the cloud to be cloud native. This is what we call Quora engine. You can understand the details if you're interested, like we separate compute from storage. We make it cloud native, right, with a tiered storage approach. It's one of many examples. But these are the implementation details that you as a customer don't need to understand. You can just leverage it. And this is the big advantage of the cloud, where we solve all this pain under the hood, and it's super complex. And it was especially complex for us because, in contrary to many analytical vendors, we also care about transactional data. Almost all of our customers also run operational workloads with us. And for operational workloads like payments, orders, shipments, fraud, this is really where it has to run all the time. And so we need to provide critical SLAs. And obviously, if you need to create critical SLAs and support and latency, it's even harder to build these integrations, because otherwise you could just provision a service, and if it's down, you restart it. But for us, the biggest challenge is to guarantee this kind of consistency and availability even for transactional systems. And the good thing is, again, we solve this problem, and the customers can just leverage it as a service.
So today, we saw 3 big AI announcements at the Kafka Summit. First one was the model inference of the Confluent clouds. So how will customers be able to integrate it, given that their infrastructure is not up to date for customers whose infrastructure isn't up to date?
Yes, absolutely. So in the end, in Confluent Cloud, what we announced today is that within Apache Flink, which is part of our serverless offering, this is the stream processor where you can do real-time data processing. And as part of that now, we can do model calls, which means if you use OpenAI or any other large language model, for example, you can directly do model inference from within the stream processor in Flink. And the big benefit of that is that you don't need yet another data lake or system to do model predictions anymore. You can do it directly from the stream processor. So while the data is flowing in motion through the system and the data streaming platform, now you cannot just write business logic. Instead, you can even apply models and do model predictions with that. And this can be for use cases like fraud detection, or for use cases like predictive maintenance, or then for generative AI use cases where you call a large language model. And this is now built into the cloud product, so you can do it within the streaming platform as part of the fully managed service.
Okay, so there's no additional step involved to integrate it?
No, this is the integration is part of our platform.
Okay.
In the end, what you need is this kind of AI, either implementation that you build by yourself with your data engineering team, or again, because you're in a fully managed world anyway, you can also do a call to a remote large language model which is hosted by another provider. And so you only need to call it, and this is the product under the hood in the end provides this kind of integration for you. This is the benefit of that.
Okay, and the other one was freight clusters. So what are the benchmarks that assess how much a customer can, say, save costs because of it? Yeah, so this is really a huge announcement for us, because in the end, with Confluent Cloud, you always get a fully managed service, and with many customers, we do then TCO calculations about how much money they can save in general when they migrate from self-managed Kafka into Confluent Cloud, because it's much, much more than just the infrastructure. It's about the networking, it's about the operations by the humans, it's about the risk involved, and so on. And this is in general the big value proposition of the fully managed Confluent Cloud. However, we in the end only had one product where you can then use it for all the different use cases. And therefore, for critical use cases with mission critical SLAs, 99.99 availability, it was always a good product. But the problem was that for some other use cases that are not that critical, Confluent Cloud was not cost efficient enough. And so customers thought about, do we still self-operate it, or maybe also go to another vendor for that? And this is in the end now with the announcement of freight clusters, we are solving this problem, because with freight clusters, customers can save up to 90% of their cost running in Confluent Cloud. Okay. And how that works under the hood is in the end that we provide
the right SLAs and the right cost for specific use cases now. You still keep the critical SLAs like you do them today, but for the less critical use cases, which are typically not requiring that low latency. And on the other side, they're typically much higher volume of scale, of throughput. And this is now with RAID clusters in the end what we solve, where we provide another SKU where you can buy much cheaper, a little bit less latency, but that's okay. And therefore you can solve this problem by choosing the right product for the right use case. And in summary, this is mission critical clusters are separated from the huge volume working clusters that are not that critical. And this is the problem that Fright Cluster solves.
Right. So now with Apache Flink set to be available, generally available by the end of this year, what are the new or other AI features that will be added onto it?
Yeah, so over the time in the end, we are working on more and more features, like when we talked about the model inference, where we can today already call other models, like in OpenAI, when you want to do a large language call. We will improve this even more, like you can, for example, also embed the model into the stream processor itself, so that you don't need to do these hops to the outside world. And this is important sometimes from a security perspective or from a latency or cost perspective. And this is this kind of innovation where we are now progressing, of course, with Flink as part of the cloud product for different AI features.
Can you give me an example of a customer on how they would go about using this?
Yes, absolutely. So in the end, if you think about a use case like fraud detection, so as soon as a payment is coming in from a data source, like from a mobile app, in real time payments need to be processed. If you think about ride hailing, you need to do a payment within a second or two before the customer has left the car, because the transactions need to happen so that the driver knows the money is arrived. And so to do that, in the back end, as soon as you get a payment information from the mobile app, you process it. And instead of just applying business logic here, you can now also embed or call a model to do the risk analysis and detect within, let's say, 500 milliseconds, is this probably a fraudulent payment or not? And based on this reaction, you can either just say, okay, this payment is now processed, or you can send an alert for fraud, or maybe even block the payment, or maybe even send an alert to the taxi driver in this case and say, this payment didn't work, you need to use another credit card. And this is exactly how you can do it now, only with the streaming platform, because it does not just now allow to embed business logic into the Flink stream processor, which is fully managed, but even calling analytic models that do the fraud detection in this case. And again, the big advantage is it's end-to-end in a single platform, and it's with critical SLAs and low latency. And that's what you can do now more or less out of the box with Confluent Cloud.
So what are some of the other generative AI features that's been integrated into the platform?
So this is what we're working on. So specifically to generative AI, we didn't announce more, but obviously, and we're working on many more features, but this is in the end what we announced today. The other big announcements we did for Flink in general was that we will now also support it on-premise. This was another big demand, directly also related to the AI features, because the real world is not only about Gen AI, but many other machine learning use cases. And part of that is also that you embed models as part of your on-premise platform. For example, for improving business processes, for risk analysis, for settlement of trades. This is all where AI and machine learning are involved in the meantime. But in the financial services sector, for example, many of these use cases still run in the data center. And this is why we announced today that we do not just provide Confluent Platform with Kafka on-premise, but now we also start supporting Flink as part of that. And as part of the Flink offering, you can in the same way embed any kind of business logic, and this also includes any kind of AI that you want to embed into the stream processor.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time and talking to us about it.
You're welcome.
Very insightful.
Thanks a lot for this.